Today I'll be continuing with my schedule discussion and point spread prediction videos. Today I'll be doing Stanford. So Stanford has been one of the worst programs, if not the worst program in college football these past 3 seasons, winning a total of 9 games combined, winning only 3 games each of the last 3 seasons. Last season, they were one of the worst programs in the Power Five, but they uh, weren't the worst team in the Power Five or even in their conference. They couldn't be the worst with Colorado and Arizona State around. Stanford was so bad last year that they had to go into overtime to beat Colorado. Uh, and I had thought that USC had the worst defense in the Power Five last year, but I was actually wrong. It was Stanford. Their defense gave up over 37 points a game, which is just so horrible. And their offense was horrible too, scoring just under 20 points a game. The exact number was 19.75. Uh, so they gave up almost twice as many points as they scored per game. Uh, and this season, they're now in the ACC, and I think it's crazy that Stanford's now in the ACC because they're in the West Coast, which is the whole opposite side of the country to where the ACC is at. Uh, and on this schedule, I don't see them getting anywhere close to a bowl game this year. I think they're still going to be terrible. They don't recruit well at all ever, and they don't use the transfer portal either. They rank 124 in the transfer portal rankings this year. Uh, mm, they're probably not going to win any more than 3 games again this year. It would take really good coaching for a team like Stanford to make it to a bowl game, which I don't think they have. And they could really go 1-11 this year. I think. I only see one game that's a pretty sure win against a team called Cal Poly, and I hadn't even heard of that team until now. But I know it's an FCS team, but it's not 100% sure win because Stanford was so awful last year that they actually lost their game against an FCS opponent. Uh, and also, there's something strange on this schedule that they play San Jose State in the non-conference to end the season, and it's on the road. That is really like a 50-50 game in my opinion. I think last year if they'd have played San Jose State would have beat Stanford. Mm, mm, and they start the season. Against TCU on a Friday at home. Uh, TCU did lose to the Coach Prime Colorado Clown Show last year, which Stanford didn't. But TCU has a better roster than Stanford does, no doubt. And I think it's unlikely that Stanford can win this one. It wouldn't be impossible, though. And then next in the conference, they play on the road at Syracuse on a Friday. That's not going to be a very likely win. Of course, Syracuse, they have a terrible home field advantage and they're a terrible football team, but they're going to have a much better quarterback than Stanford is going to have. And then on the road at Clemson. So 2 road games in a row, and there's no hope in the Clemson game. They'll probably get blown out in this one. Not even the good teams can usually beat Clemson at Death Valley, so Stanford is for sure not doing it. And then Virginia Tech, they're going to get beat really bad in that one too. I think Virginia Tech might be even better than Clemson this year. Uh, and then on the road at Notre Dame. So this isn't a new thing for Stanford having to play Notre Dame. Uh, mm, Sometimes, being an ACC team because they already play Notre Dame every year anyway. But they're not beating Notre Dame. They're probably going to lose pretty bad. Notre Dame, ESPN has them ranked number 5. Now, I don't agree with that, but I do think they have a good chance to be a top 10 team, which Stanford is not going to be anywhere near a top 10 team. They were one of the 4 worst teams in the Power 5 last year, obviously. Uh, and then SMU. SMU is new to the ACC also. They're coming from the group of 5, but SMU already, I think, has a better roster than Stanford does. And then Wake Forest, this is one that they could maybe get. It's nice for them to have that one at home because Wake Forest was awful last year too, but not quite as awful as Stanford. And they're not usually uh, mm, as awful as Stanford has been these last several years. And then NC State on the road, no hope in that one. Uh, NC State made some nice transfer portal additions, and they're also returning a lot from last year's team that won 9 games. And then they take a week off before playing Louisville at home. Not really a chance in that one either. Louisville has got a way better roster than Stanford does. And then on the road at California, that's one that there's a possibility Stanford could pull it off. Would have been nice to get that one at home. Uh, those are uh, 2 of the worst teams in the country. Mm, and then uh, uh, now I'll move on to the point spread prediction. Games in the green are games where I think Stanford will be favored to win by a blowout, 20 or more points, and there's one of those, Cal Poly. And then games in the uh, mm, uh, purple are games where I think Stanford will be favored to win by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's one of those, San Jose State, and then games in the gray are games where I think Stanford will be an underdog by about a field goal, which is 1 to 5 points, and there's 3 of those: TCU, Syracuse, and California. And games in the pink are games where I think Stanford will be about a field goal favorite, 1 to 5 points, and there's one of those, Wake Forest. And games in the yellow are games where I think Stanford will be an underdog by about a touchdown, 6 to 9 points, and there's 3 of those: Virginia Tech, SMU, and Louisville. And games in the orange are games where I think Stanford will be an underdog by double digits, not a blowout though. So that's 10 to 19 points, and there's 3 of those: Clemson, Notre Dame, and NC State. Uh, so Cal Poly, Stanford should be favored in that one by around 3 touchdowns. And mm, TCU, I think they'll be about a 5 point favorite over Stanford. And Syracuse, I think the spread in that one will be around 5 points. Mm, and California. I think that'll also be about a 5 point spread, also. Uh, mm, and San Jose State is a tough one. mm, Stanford is supposed to be better than San Jose State, so I think maybe they'll be favored by about 6. But I could possibly see at that point Stanford even being an underdog in that game because it is a road game, and San Jose State isn't horrible. They're in the Mountain West Conference, and that Cal Poly game, I could possibly even see it being in the blue, which would mean they'd be a double-digit favorite, but not a blowout favorite, because Stanford did lose to an FCS team last year. Then Wake Forest, I just have that in the pink because it's at home. I think maybe Stanford would be favored in it because of that, but I think if they are, it'll just be by 1 point, and that's a tough one. It wouldn't be shocking at all to me if Wake Forest was the favorite in that game. Uh, and uh, mm, Virginia Tech. I think the spread in that one will be around 9 points. That would be in the orange if it was a road game, and the same with Louisville. I think the spread will be around 9, and it'd be an orange game on the road. And then Clemson and Notre Dame. I think the spreads in both of those will be like 18 points. And NC State probably it'll be like 2 touchdowns, maybe 14 points. But Stanford's uh, offense and defense would have to improve a whole lot for them to win some of these games that they're going to be an underdog in, which there are only 3 games that they'll uh, probably be a favorite in. If you uh, don't really believe that Stanford's offense was so bad last year. They scored 10 points on Southern Cal, and you know how awful their defense um, mm, was last year. Uh, and if you don't believe how bad Stanford's defense that was last year, they let 6 teams that score over 40 points on them in regulation last year. Uh, so that will be it with this video, and please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.